Thanks, Bridget, and thanks, everyone. So first, I just want to thank our hosts for having us here, and I want to thank Dr. Bridget Walsh and Dr. Markus Kemmelmeier for being here as well. So we're here to discuss our IGE grant that we received. And I've got a lot of information to go over in a short amount of time. Shocking for these workshops, I know. So I'm going to go ahead and move on right to the next slide and jump into this. So our project, you can go back just one slide. So you can see a picture of our cohort. So our project we titled GAIN, and GAIN stands for Graduate Acceleration Through Innovation and Networking. So the goal of this program was to not only retain doctoral students, which was a big goal of the project. So to retain doctoral students from first generation underrepresented backgrounds, but also to see them thrive academically, socially, etc. So you'll see in this picture here, this is the majority of the cohort of our GAIN scholars with some supportive faculty and staff. You'll also notice we were all masked up as this started sort of in the throes of the pandemic, which added a little layer of challenge to everything like it did for all of us. And I'll talk about that in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. So this is just a kind of an overarching view of what this program was, what it was sort of born out of, and what we wanted to get out of it. So we based GAIN as sort of a phase 2 from what we call a phase 1, which was our grad fit program. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that grad fit box, fit standing for fully inclusive training. So GradFit is a recruitment effort at our institution that targets first generation and underrepresented students. And we've been running this program for about 9 years now and quite successfully. So that is a week-long boot camp where we bring about 50 students onto campus from a few different institutions and give them tips and tricks on how to prepare a competitive application for graduate school, prepare them for some of the challenges and opportunities for graduate school. And we've seen quite a bit of success from this program over the last few years. So now that we recruited this population of students here, how can we support them once they were here? And so that's sort of where GAIN came from, was this next phase. So the middle box here, this is sort of the meat and potatoes of GAIN. And I won't go into too many details just for time, but this was a 2-year program in which we followed one core cohort of students. So each summer began with a 3-week intensive academic boot camp with a variety of different modules in each boot camp. Really a lot of skills building workshops, from mentoring, computational tools, using Python, statistical analysis, how to leverage R, and things like that. Throughout the academic year, they were supported with professional development workshops, peer mentoring, IDP workshops, and things like that. The goal of this, like I mentioned earlier, to retain our students. And so what we were really hoping to see is improved quantitative skills, greater social support, right? What do those social networks look like? Do they feel like they belong here? We hope to see greater academic success, which all leads to higher retention, and then ultimately to completing their program and moving on to the careers that they desired. So this just gives a very short synopsis of what we wanted to do with the program. Next slide, please. So what we saw throughout this program, like anything, were quite a few strengths and challenges. Some of the strengths were that this was a really nice complement to GradFit. Like I said, we were targeting to recruit first gen and underrepresented students. Now that they recruited them here, we want to support the same population of students, and that's where GAIN came in. Another big thing that we saw was that these students were very much more so resource aware. So I'm sure at many of your institutions, you have a plethora of resources out there, but if students don't know them, don't know where they are, maybe don't feel like they have access to them, they're not going to use them. And this program really facilitated access to those resources. Scholars and families had strong praise for the program, the institution's support for the program. A good thing that we saw was that initial outcome data, and we're still very much in the midst of data analysis, but initial outcome data shows that these students have improved in knowledge across all of the modules that we covered. We did have a module on virtual reality that was a little more challenging, not as well received. Some of the students didn't quite see the connection of this skill and how they would use it in the future. So that was a little bit of a miss on our part. Another strength, and I have this in italics because it's a bit of a strength and a challenge, is that this program was very interdisciplinary. Not just from the students' perspective, but also the faculty. So we had faculty from all disciplines, and the students were from all disciplines. So a big strength is that these students could collaborate with each other from other departments, and they would probably never meet these students before. So that fostered some nice community there. The challenge, the flip side of that, is that not all disciplines sort of function the same, right? Some disciplines use statistical analysis in different ways. Some programs use other programs in computer languages in different ways. So that was a little bit of a challenge. Other challenges that we saw was that recruitment was a really big challenge for this program. We were, of course, recruiting in the midst of a pandemic, which was challenging. We were hoping to get a cohort of about 30 students, and we ended up with 22. Not only did this include first-year students, which was the intention, but it included second-year doctoral students as well. And that added a little bit of a challenge because we had to postpone the program a year due to the pandemic. So we had first and second years. And depending on where you're at in your doctoral journey, it's just a little bit different. One of the other things is we had some what we'll call spacing and dosage issues in our first summer boot camp. It was 3 weeks. It was about 9 to 5 every day, and it was very intense. And I think we threw a little too much too soon at all of the students, and that's definitely something we learned from for the next year's summer boot camp. Another thing is that we had a couple faculty that left the institution who were on the grant, and that left a couple gaps that we were struggling to fill. So that was another challenge. Part of our virtual reality module was to create some 360 videos, sort of a day in the life of a graduate student. And those were seen as sort of a hassle on the student side. And then lastly, and some of you have probably seen this too throughout your projects, is keeping the control group engaged, especially for 2 years, was absolutely a challenge. And you'll hear a little bit more about this as I pass it off to Bridget and Markus and kind of what we learned and where we're going from here. Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks, Loren, and thanks for your excellent work keeping the day-to-day features of the program running. My name is Bridget Walsh, and I'm a professor in human development and family science. And the family involvement and support strand represents work from me and my collaborators from public health, sociology, education, diversity and equity, and a couple others. Students thought the family support and connection strand was like a nice blanket and a cup of tea amidst R and Python and developing apps. And we had the wonderful opportunity to work not only with historically underrepresented graduate students and or first generation doctoral students, as well as their families. And the image on the slide is our kickoff, our opening ceremony, and in the ballroom, it includes family members and doctoral students. When we first conceptualized this strand, I knew I wanted to prioritize as doctoral student outcomes, well-being, building on Rockinson's work, and sense of belonging informed by Haggerty and O'Keefe. And then we broadly defined family and normalized diverse family throughout the experience. This included fictive kin and non-relatives as well. We attempted to take a multifaceted and holistic approach to understanding who graduate students are and what they need to thrive. We had a well-being and mindfulness meditation expert teach us some skills, and then all of our GAIN scholars got an app so they could practice the skills outside of the preparatory boot camp. Families did come to campus, and we also had online activities for those who couldn't join. One lesson is in the future to make Zoom available so that families could attend the live sessions as well. All of our families got tablets as well as a folder with healthy communication tips to help them kind of be cognizant of things to keep in mind when communicating with their doctoral students. And we had travel stipends available for those needing support to come to our campus. We always try to give families opportunities to learn more about what it means to be a graduate student. This included small groups, exercises, trivia, and large group discussion. And our families had, a wide array of educational background and experiences, some never stepping foot on a university campus. And we had a 6-year-old, we were trying to normalize terms, and we had a 6-year-old beautifully define dissertation. And Loren, we should have hired her right then and there. But it was just beautiful. We had such a wide variety of experience, and they were such a beautiful group of families to work with. I have this last bullet here where it says adultification and parentification. We conducted focus groups which the doctoral students and their family members found to be like support groups, and they found them very therapeutic. In the focus group I was conducting with our GAIN scholars, very early on in the conversation, the GAIN scholar talked about, and I don't think she knew these terms, but she talked about her experience as a Black child, always being viewed as older than she is or was, and that's called adultification. And then she also talked about taking care of her siblings at a very young age and having those adult responsibilities, which are parentification. And that's when I kind of took a deep breath, right? Because it could go a lot of different ways. And very early, she set the tone that these focus groups were what Mickey Scott Bay Jones calls a brave space or a necessary space filled with real talk. And she was met with support, and then other people started sharing things. And, I've never had a focus group like this, but we laughed, we cried, we still talked about it years after. And it just gave us wonderful insights to doctoral students, particularly those who are historically underrepresented graduate students and or first generation and domestic students, mostly in the STEM disciplines. We have 2 publications up here. They're both published in Family Relations, qualitative studies about the students and families' experiences. And then we have a measure that we developed in review and a couple other studies in review. If you care about family involvement in graduate school, on this slide, I took this from the CGS, their Twitter account, I believe. If you're a dean or a faculty and you have doctoral students, we would love if you would share, go to the Twitter page and share this link with them. We're looking for dyads, so a doctoral student classifying themselves as historically underrepresented and first generation, and a family member, which is loosely defined. And we have nice incentives for the first 230 dyads. I went over 4 minutes, so Markus, sorry about that, but I'm going to pass you the baton.
Thank you, Bridget. Could we advance the? Oh, okay, thank you so much. Yes, I came into this project actually a little late. I was a graduate director of an interdisciplinary program for 7 years and had actually 4 incoming students or a second-year student in that particular program. But as a graduate dean, I only took over last summer, and looking at the project, coming in anew and realizing how great it is. There's concrete skills training. There is really a sense of community, explicit acknowledgement of family, and also the strongest findings really that thus far that came out of this study was how the importance of family for the well-being and so maintenance of the spirit, which is critical for retention for these graduate students. And my first thought is we need to use the knowledge that we've gained, scale the project, and implement it at the university, perhaps ideally as a much more regular piece of how we take care of incoming graduate students. And so the idea of scaling came up very early. Now, we had the challenge, of course. The NSF has thrown $500,000 up for multiple years here, which was slightly complicated by the pandemic here. But of course, we didn't really quite have these kinds of resources. But it was important that we made use of the existing knowledge, experience we had directly gained from this, the infrastructure that we had built of how we do what, when, down to the admin detail, that we could also then go to the provost and say, hey, would you support this? Indeed, the provost was easily persuaded by this. We're very grateful for this. And we needed some money here. Just to give you a sense of scale, we received $45,000. But most of this money, really almost $30,000, really goes to the technology. One point that really attracted students was that they received originally a free laptop and then a free tablet here. We wanted to make this attractive also from this point of view. Our university is engaged what we call a digital Wolfpack initiative. So all incoming undergraduates get actually a free tablet handed to them, and as a tool that really will accompany them all the way through their undergraduate existence. And we said, hey, why don't you include us with this? And that was the first $30,000 going away with that. But we already had built an institution, knew how to develop things, knew how to have materials, and the remaining $15,000 will basically stay with us for at least for a year. This was also important because this is really a wonderful initiative in the area of building diversity, equity, and inclusion here. This was important for us to really teach very clear instrumental things that people could use that you may have not been exposed to, at the same time also signaling to the students and to everybody else who's watching, we really deeply care about well-being and we're attentive to you and want to build this. When I say symbolic value, this doesn't mean to basically give us a sort of a little sort of diversity feather on our hat, but really just attracting attention to say, oh, this can work, you can do this too. This is a really living priority for the institution, and where we also reach out to others, hey, you can do that too. You can participate in this effort, or you can build your own and really make this a priority. What was new for us in this particular go around that we're about to start this August is really that we're also expanding this to international students. Previously, it was STEM, primarily doctoral students this time and domestic students this time. We're expanding this to doctoral students from all kinds of backgrounds here and also include international students. We're also excited to see, because we have also identified a need for often international students with regard to the inclusion in the broader life of the community, many of whom actually face very similar challenges, not necessarily identical ones, but similar challenges to students from traditionally underrepresented groups. Would you please advance the slide? And what we do here also fits very well with broader institutional priorities that I was able to advance, building on what was there before. Mentoring and elevation of mentoring as a really critical aspect of a faculty member's role is something that we've been pursuing for a while. We use the Mentoring Mentors curriculum that you might be aware of from the University of Wisconsin. We actually have made this now mandatory for new graduate faculty here. And in contrast to what people assumed, they don't really like mandatory things. Actually, the reception has been very positive. And we'll also make sure that we make clear that students who enter that advisors also pointed in this particular direction. The interdisciplinary outreach has been a great strength. Sometimes it's difficult for new students in entering a particular program already being hit with things from other fields here, and that sometimes causes a little bit of grumbling here. At the same time, the most concrete link, actually, because we also bring faculty together here, that this has really elevated graduate education as a goal and the enhancement of graduate education in the minds of many faculty members. Out of this effort of engaging in this particular GAIN project, we have now new grants that are being submitted by faculty from from different programs, including involving Bridget here, collaborations with faculty members that she met through this particular effort, and we're much more focused on really advancing graduate education as a purpose in itself. The other important element where we have much more clear, concrete statistical evidence also is that student well-being, at least as far as family is concerned, has been a critical aspect here. And we want to make sure that we as an institution really pay attention to this concretely by monitoring this. And gets me to my last point. We should not forget that first-year students, especially those who we see all the time from across really the different domains, really can serve as informants. And by that, informants about what the experience is like, what we need to do, where we're lacking, what works and what doesn't. And that is a critical element that they serve. I mean, they just talk. We don't really have to press them, but they just talk to us about their experiences, and that can really serve as a wonderful source of information that ultimately helps us to become better and serve these students more. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much for your attention to our project here, and I give it back to Christine.